My name is Farah. I'm a graphic designer. I'm the creative director and founder of House 9, which is a graphic design studio here in Montreal. I think that living here and Western hegemonic culture, it demands assimilation. And for me, a big part of my process here, I moved here about 20 years ago, was abandoning a lot of parts of my identity. It's been a bit of a process to unlearn certain things and relearn other parts. I would say it's a combination of rediscovering who I am and also making an effort to better understand the people around me and being able to then bake that into the practice and create an environment that is open for whoever you are, wherever you are, and creating cultures of care. I think it's important when we think about communities is to not think about them as like a collective in the sense that when you meet one person from a specific community, that they are representative of the entire community's belief systems and opinions and thought processes. In approaching members of different communities, I try to connect on an individual level, as well as, I don't mean to sound so individualistic and say, no, this is just one person. Like, obviously, the communities that we belong to, they inform so much of who we are. So, yeah, really trying to strike that balance of what your background is and who you are as an individual and try to get as many of those opinions and connections as possible. As a designer, our role is less about leading and more about listening and collaborating and facilitating. There's this term community of focus, so who the work is intended for at the end of the day, and really trying to identify who they are, try to learn about them at the outset, try to understand what the client's goals are with respect to their community of focus, and then try to co-design, co-create solutions that really work. Of course it depends project to project, but we want to bring our expertise to the table, but we don't want to overshadow the needs of the project and the needs of the people who will receive it in the end. One of the things that's I've tried to work in my practice is overcome this fear of lack of knowledge. So obviously part of it is doing my homework, finding trusted people in my circle that I can lean on to ask questions that I might be too embarrassed to talk to folks about. And then after that point, trying to identify and then fill those gaps in knowledge in a really humble way. For me, it's been a process of maybe aging. Just the older that I've gotten, the more I understand that the responsibility is not on me solely all the time. And I think that translates into all aspects of my work. So not just when I think about reaching out to people who are outside of my team, but also within it. Just because I'm the creative director doesn't mean that I have to have all the creative ideas and do all the design work and just be the person. I'm not the person. We are a team and we all work really closely together. And a big part of my job actually is to step back. It's to assemble the space and then step back, allow what happens, the conversations to ensue, and then facilitate and step in and ask questions and stuff. So in terms of, when we're working with clients and communities of focus who are outside of the makeup of the team itself, we have to approach it in a really similar manner. This is one of my favorite projects, and I actually love how this project has opened up a bit of a research side to our practice, which is very cool. So it came from a very practical moment where A few years ago, we designed the website for Momenta. As we were working our way through the design, we saw that some of the artists' names weren't appearing properly with the font that we had chosen. In that moment, to quickly solve a problem, we just changed the typeface to Helvetica and moved on from there. Fast forward a few years, we've been working with this client named, they're called 221A out in Vancouver. We did a rebrand for them, and part of it was choosing a new typeface. We did like a good amount of research and thought about fallbacks as well. But the typeface that we used actually, it wasn't displaying their land acknowledgement properly. It's like a technical visual issue with the design. We want it to look beautiful and it's not looking beautiful, and it's not looking like it should. At first it was actually really tough because with Indigenous typefaces, I didn't even really have the vocabulary to really describe the problem. Some of these letters are missing accents, or some of these letters look like they're just different glyphs, but I don't know what the names are of the glyphs. So I just was left with so many questions. So then I just started, I spent a lot of time on Google, just trying, really rudimentary Google searches, right? Like, what are accents on Indigenous letters? And eventually I learned the word diacritic. So then you get this one word, right? So just increasing the vocabulary. I happened to be in Vancouver, and I went into this bookstore called Massey Books, and they had quite an extensive Indigenous book collection. So I looked through that, and I spoke with one of the people who was behind the counter, and I explained my problem to him. He actually did some research and recommended this amazing book called Indigenous North American Type by Kevin King by Tipotech. And this book was such an amazing resource, and it was quite serendipitous because I happened to be in Vancouver, I happened to walk into a bookstore, and this person happened to find the book for me. But then based on this book, I was able to develop a vocabulary, figure out what characters were missing that I needed and how to describe them. And then I got in touch with a type foundry and asked them to expand the typeface to include the diacritics and characters that we needed. I hit a roadblock, and I always know that there is a point where I'm going to have to reach out to somebody because I'm sort of in hypothesis theory mode, right? Because I'm not in a structured learning where I have a specific teacher who has the knowledge. So what I usually try to do is do as much research as I can. And while I'm doing that research, I'm doing other parallel things, trying to immerse myself within the learning from as many avenues as possible. And then over time, I get kind of clarity, right? Like there's some theories where I think, okay, I've answered as much as I can here, and now I just need verification that I'm correct or I'm incorrect. These are things that I just can't find answers to. These are actually some black holes that really just I need advice. So I think with these two, I feel like I can have a generative conversation where I have enough background to approach it, but then of course I'm there to learn and somebody has to tell me things. I don't know everything when I show up to these conversations. I don't think that that everybody can design for everybody. Of course not. I think it's possible to be a collaborator and to be an active learner in projects that are not intended for you. But in some way or another, you will need to find expertise and knowledge that is directly related to your community of focus. We do a lot of web work, and in that we identify communities of focus, and we do a lot of user testing. Maybe it's that method. Maybe there's people on the side of the client where they can provide knowledge. We did a project a few years ago, and we still work with them, the Johns Hopkins Center for Indigenous Health, where we do a series of illustrations on maternal health. We have one person on our team who is Indigenous, but they're not an illustrator. Our illustrator is white, so we lean a lot on our clients who are Indigenous to do the work. And what we like to say to them is they're the brain and we're the hands. And we bring the skills that they don't have, but then they bring the expertise that we don't have. And then we can have a really generative collaboration.